Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Are You In? So I'm super excited to do this one today. If you saw my previous uh, video, you saw that I did a cover of Plush by Stone Temple Pilots, which was a hint to what I'm doing today. So on this version of Are You In? I will be reviewing Stone Temple Pilots' latest album, Stone Temple Pilots. Now, don't confuse this one with the previous Stone Temple Pilots album that they had. I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago. Um, that's a different one. But before I even get into that, who are Stone Temple Pilots? Stone Temple Pilots, for those of you who don't know, are a alternative rock slash hard rock band from San Diego, California. They used to be very grungy in the 90s, but that style has definitely changed over time. The members include Jeff Gutt on lead vocals, Dean DeLeo on guitar, Robert DeLeo on bass and backing vocals, and Eric Kentz on drums. And then their previous albums include Core in 1992, Purple in 1994, Tiny Music, Songs from the Vatican Gift Shop in 1996, Number 4 in 1999, Shangri-La Dee Da in 2001, and Stone Temple Pilots in 2010. Now, this is one of my favorite bands ever, basically. I didn't necessarily grow up listening to them, but I did listen to a lot of them in my teen years, and I just loved the feel. I particularly am a huge grunge fan. Scott Weiland, Lance Staley, Chris Cornell. All these people are very much influences as to the type of singing that I do. And I can honestly say that Core is in my top 5 favorite albums of all time. Purple and Tiny Music are definitely in my top 25. So a lot of those CDs I really care about very much influence my type of listening to music. I was hugely hurt when Scott Weiland passed. I remember exactly where I was. I was on my way to work in Northampton, and right when I got to an intersection, the podcast I was listening to, they were talking about that Scott Weiland had passed, and that one definitely hit me hard because a lot of the grunge musicians, a lot of them have passed. I mean, you probably know Kurt Cobain. Chris Cornell passed last year. Scott Weiland, Lance Staley passed. A lot of these big names in grunge have passed over the years, and losing another one wasn't great. It's actually interesting enough too that they did try to replace Scott Weiland at one point in time with Chester Bennington, and that's an even weirder thing that he's also passed. And these big names from my childhood are gone. But that's a different conversation for a different time. Basically, I had no idea that this album was coming out. I had no idea that they had found a new singer or they even were trying to create another album. But I found out last month that they were putting this out through a couple of singles. And then I looked into the particular person that replaced Scott Weiland. It's really interesting. So this guy named Jeff Gutt, he was on The X Factor. The American version of it, the second season, from what I understand. I guess he didn't make it through to the main competition the first season, but he got all the way to second place in the second season. And I've never watched X Factor, but I looked at a lot of his songs on X Factor, and I definitely saw someone with a lot of rock star potential, and I really like his story. So I am rooting for this guy. I definitely am. When I came into this, I was really hoping that this would be a very good CD. So what do I think of it? First off, I'll do a couple of pros and cons like I always do. And the biggest pros I would say is, my God, Jeff Gutt sounds great on it. He actually hits the vocal styles of Scott Weiland very well. Um, I would say more particularly Scott Weiland in from Tiny Music all the way up to his stuff with Velvet Revolver. It's definitely more of the glam rock style than the grunge style, um, and he does it very well while also bringing a lot of his own interpretation to a lot of stuff. I've looked at live stuff, and he actually portrays a lot of the old music very well, which is something that I was really frustrated with when Chester Bennington tried to do this, because like I can tell what his style of voice is, and his voice did not fit the work of Stone Temple Pilots. He's much more higher, a little bit more nasally, and it doesn't have the glam rock to him. Whereas Scott Weiland had that low voice, and then it turned into a little bit thinner of voice, but much more charismatic and much more showman, if you will. And Jeff Gutt does so well with that. And because of that, that gives the DeLeo brothers and Eric Wentz the ability to not have to reshape the mold of their band in order to fit somebody else. They get to be able to work on the ideas that they've already worked on and make them better and make them more interesting and experiment with things that they haven't done in quite some time. And that really shows on here. You still have Robert DeLeo sounding amazing on bass. And for those of you who don't know, Robert DeLeo to me is probably the most underrated bassist of all time. Because when you think of Stone Temple Pilots, you don't necessarily think of a great bassist, but he does so well throughout all the songs. Some of them songs are more functional bass, but a lot of them have their own interesting bass line that you could listen to, second, third time and have it still be interesting. Whether it's a bouncy bass with a lot of very fast-paced notes and a lot of fills, or something more melodic, a lot more lyrical. So definitely, if you are going to listen to the CD, listen to it either with headphones with really good bass pickup, or use it on something that has that shows the bass very well. That to me, that's another thing that really stands out. And like again, that shows that it gives the other DeLeo brother, Dean DeLeo, the ability to do some very interesting chord progressions, do some awesome solos. There's like a solo on every single song, which I don't know if they've. I'm trying to think back. I don't think every single CD had that, but there's a lot more. There's a lot more guitar solos on there, and there's a lot of really good ones. And it gives them the ability to play around with the style. Like there are definitely a lot of hard-hitting songs, but there's also a lot of songs that are a little bit more laid back, something that you probably would have heard on Tiny Music, a little bit more acoustic, and or even on Purple, like a little bit more acoustic sound, laid back, slow jam kind of things. And the third thing with this is that, like I said, with experimenting, is the chord progressions themselves. So you get a song like Just a Little Lie, where there's a little post-chorus, and you get a progression of D, C, B flat, A, G, all major, and that sounds interesting. You have a song like The Art of Letting Go, which has all these different color changes. And honestly, my favorite song on the album, this slow feel, jazzy, beautiful song, where it starts with you go between A major and C minor through the first half of the verse. Then it goes C, G sharp or A flat, G, F sharp minor, E in the second half of the verse. And then the chord progression in the chorus is E, E major 7, C sharp minor, A, E. Another color change. And then, even still, you have this uh, progression during the solo where it switches between E flat major 7 and G major 7, and then eventually goes to F sharp minor E. So, like, throughout there, you have so many different color changes, so many different key centers that you're working with, that gives it this interesting idea throughout the song. And just like Jeff Gutt's vocals flow so nicely over all of that. His falsetto works very well. His chest voice sounds great, and that's one where it does still sound like Whelan, but it does show a lot of his character in there. And the song itself talking about trying to search for home and not being able to find it wherever you go unless this person is with you, or this person that you love is with them. So there is that beautiful lyrics over this whole entire beautiful song with an interesting bass line. All of it just really, really interesting. I could have seen this song on Purple or on Tiny Music. And this is one where the lyrics also work very well. So like everything comes together in a very awesome way. And again, another chord progression interesting one you got is Reds and Blues, which is the other one, my next favorite song, and the other one that I would have seen on probably Tiny Music, where the progression goes between C, B flat, G, B flat, F, G at the verse, where they throw a G sus chord in every now and again. In the pre-chorus, you have some G minor variation chords for 4 measures, and then you go B flat, C, and G. And then the chorus is goes between F major 7 and C for 2 bars, and then you got B flat and C. And then you even have a bridge progression of E flat major 7, C, E flat major 7, G. Again, a lot of interesting tonal ideas that I honestly need to re-listen through the discography again. But the only CD where I would think that would happen a lot of would be probably Tiny Music or probably Purple. And the other cool thing with all this experimentation is there are a lot of songs that have these verse measures where it's not just 4 measures of something. Like in Reds and Blues, you get a verse idea, or this little snippet idea of 9 measures each. Or in the first song, where you have Middle of Nowhere, you have this chorus part where it's all together it's 44 beats, right? Potentially 11 measures if you did in 4/4. But it breaks down into 4 sections of one being 9 beats, the next one being 11 beats, the next one being 11 beats, and then 13 beats. Which again, in a song that's pretty straightforward in terms of music, it's really cool to be able to see just a little bit of alteration to make it interesting. You have these little things where they alter the number of measures in between. Like you also have something where it's 5 measures. For a song like Just a Little Lie, you have a little progression of verse for 5 measures. So all around, a lot of really cool ideas. And even still, you have some straightforward stuff that are singles. You got Meadow, which is definitely a very much glam rock, alternative rock song. And it doesn't do anything really stand out worthy, but it's a very solid single and one that's very interesting to listen to. While you also have Jeff Gutt's vocals just sound awesome on there. A very nice, impression of Scott Weiland, while still having your own little, things that make it your own. And there's some pretty cool harmonies on there as well. And then you also get something like Roll Me Under, which you probably sound something more along the lines of something on Core or something on number 4, something a little bit harder rock, and a little bit sludgy, where, again, not necessarily, I mean, I would say it's a lot more interesting of an arrangement. You got some awesome drums on there. You got an awesome bass line, probably the best bass line on the album. You have a hard-hitting guitar part, and this is where Jeff Gutt's voice again gets to shine because it's a lot of power on there, which is, Whelan had that power, definitely, but it didn't show as much in his later years, I would say. And that's why I just really like all this. Is like, mostly, for the most part, the music's going to be interesting no matter what song you're listening to. Each one has its own flair and gives it a certain appeal. Now, also, as a musician and someone who works with music and hears different chord progressions, there are some songs that I personally think would have been cool in a different idea. So, like, for example, 6/8, which honestly I don't think is an awesome name for a song. I'm never a fan of naming a song based on what the feel is. And I've heard that, and I've seen that in a couple of different albums over the years. But like, just because the song's in 6/8 doesn't mean you have to call it 6/8. Anyways, in the chorus, there's a section that's in E, and then all of a sudden it goes into a section of D. But the way that the harmonies come in, you hear an F. Now, if you were in a key of D, that would be what we call the flat 9, because the F sharp is in the key of D, not F. So for me, I hear that progression potentially being in the key of F or in the key of B flat and making it more interesting. But it goes into D. So like, that's just a thing for me where it's like, it's still a cool idea. I could have heard it in this way, and my ear still wants to go that way. Another one, which is Thought She'd Be Mine, which honestly sounds a lot like The Last Fight from Velvet Revolver. And this particular song also has an awesome, really cool, awesome progression of D, E7, over D, G, B minor, C in the verse, and that's why I kind of hear it, because in at least in the chorus part, I believe it's D, E7, G, C. I think that's what it is. I'll have to cover that song eventually, but there is a part in the chorus itself that it goes between D and A minor, and then it goes back to D. But the way that the progression works, you can definitely hear it in C or an F, which I think would be a really nice touch. And that's just me. I like to experiment a lot, and they experiment a lot on the CD too, so I give them credit. Overall, just a lot of really, really, really cool ideas that I just want to hear over and over again. Now, unfortunately, onto the bad part. And honestly, there isn't really much. The one thing I would say, and maybe this is being too harsh on them, but because I love this band so much, I gotta say it. There are a lot of times on the CD that the lyrics themselves are kind of mediocre to below average. And it's awesome that the music's there to make it interesting, because the lyrics themselves do not carry a lot of these songs. Now, there are some cases that that they do carry it. Like I said, I think the lyrics of The Art of Letting Go are very vulnerable. I do, for the most part, like the lyrics on Finest Hour, and I believe they're talking about being an homage to Scott Weiland, talking about losing someone that people really care about. and for the most part, there's a lot of really good imagery on there. But when you know during the chorus, all this is hearing your finest hour. This is your finest hour. It just gets repetitive, and they keep repeating it all the time. And I don't necessarily think it works. Now, again, this is a song where you have an interesting chord progression. In the verses, you got D major 7, D7, then B flat, C, F, G, D. And the guitar part does, at the end of the verse idea, it does a little line onto C sharp, giving you that seventh again. And then, I mean, it does work interestingly with the measures. The verses themselves are 6 measures long, so it adds some interest in the idea of how these verses are shaped, and that brings enough into there to make up for kind of mediocre lyrics. Even on "Thought You'd Be Mine," there's some pretty good lyrics in there, but again, when you just keep repeating "I thought you'd be mine, I thought you'd be mine" during the chorus, it's kind of mediocre. Um, so usually, it doesn't affect the songs. Like Resin Blues is also another good one of imagery, and honestly, the only one that I can think of that harkens back to the ambiguity of a lot of the lyrics out of Scott Weiland and out of Stone Temple Pilots in their first 3 albums, and I really like the ambiguity of it. The imagery itself. If you look on the song of "Still Remains," one of my favorite Stone Temple Pilots songs because it's beautiful, it's interesting, a lot of really good harmonies, a lot of just really cool chord progressions. At the same time, you get this song that has really, really weird lyrics. Like, honestly, read up to the lyrics of that song, and a lot of it doesn't really make sense, but it has some poignant words. One of my favorites being, "If you should die before me, ask if you can bring a friend." Such a silly thing to say, but also something with so much meaning behind it. Loving someone so much where it would be like, if you were to go, please bring me with you. Please tell me wherever you're going that I can come along with you. It's those kind of words that in themselves, you know, everything else together doesn't really make sense, but it's still, the ambiguity of it gives it an air of mystery and an air of interest in these very interesting songs. Even Plush, if you look at the lyrics for Plush, none of it really makes sense. In a level of like straightforwardness. But if you look through all the imagery and all the metaphor, you start to understand what this song is about. And it could have, and that's another thing. It could be open to a lot of interpretations throughout a lot of the stuff that they do. So fortunately, a lot of these songs are kind of straightforward on the meaning of the lyrics. And because of that, it takes the air of mystery out of it, and therefore you have to dissect these lyrics and for what they truly are. And a lot of them, to me, are very mediocre. And again, usually the music behind it makes up for that. There is one particular song on there, "Good Shoes," not great. Very simplistic on the arrangement, very simplistic on the words. Because of it, it's very much a forgettable song. Also, "Guilty" a little bit. "Guilty" is iffy on that, though it does have a lot of color changes that make up for it. Those are probably the 2 worst songs on the album, at least in my opinion. But overall, a very, very well done, very refreshing album from them, and something. It's nice to see them back. It's very nice to see them back. It's very nice to see that they still have it, that they still have these ideas to throw out there, that they found a singer who can match the showmanship of Scott Weiland and his vocal style. It makes me want to go see him. That would be really cool. It's unfortunate that I didn't get to see a Scott Weiland before he passed, but I think if Scott Weiland was here, he would probably be very happy to see the direction that this band is going in. I would recommend this to any Stone Temple Pilots fan, knowing that you're going to hear more of a sound closer to the previously to, like, maybe I would say the previous Stone Temple Pilots album, or something like Tiny Music, or a little bit of the slow, the less grungy stuff on Purple. If you are someone who just loves Core and Purple and doesn't like Tiny Music as much, you might not get a big kick out of this. But it's still one worth listening to. I personally would put it in literally the halfway point between the first three albums and the latter three albums. Not saying that the latter three albums aren't bad. There's just a lot of, it's not as great as these three very influential CDs. There's a lot of underrated stuff on there, and I definitely will go over it eventually when I do a discography review on this stuff, because I have so much to say about this band, and I think you all would like to hear it. In terms of other people, if you like glam-ish rock, if you like alternative rock, if you like hard rock, I think you would very much enjoy this. The singles are going to be over all over the rock airwaves, and I think they're going to do very well. If you are a rock fan in general, check it out. Or if you are interested in Stone Temple Pilots, I think this would be a great way of starting your journey, because I think this is literally the midway point, where if you were to listen to this, you could listen to the previous three albums. Even if they're not great, you could at least listen to them and feel connected there. Or you can listen to Tiny Music, which will get you to Purple, which will get you the Core. And I think this would be a perfect way of jumping on. And hell, like, honestly, this also does have a lot of Velvet Revolver feel in there. So definitely then listen to Velvet Revolver too, because Velvet Revolver was very good for the time that they had. And I'm really excited to see what they do. I would do a word of warning for them in terms of the lyrics, is to just work a little bit harder on the lyrics. Just because, eventually you might get to a point where the music isn't as great, and because of that, the lyrics will be a problem. But again, this is Jeff Gutt's first time on this band, so I think even being there longer will probably put out some really, really cool stuff, and I can't wait to see it. I really hope that they win some awards for this, because they did a fantastic job. And I don't think this will necessarily be my favorite album of the year. There's still so much time, but this is the best album I've heard so far, and hopefully it'll be in my top 10 when the end of the year comes. We'll see. I'm super excited to see what they come up with next. Also, another really, really quick word. Like I said, you probably want to listen to this with some very, very nice headphones, or stuff that, that gives you a nice bass to it. But you also want to listen to this with, if you're going to listen to it in headphones, make sure that both sides work. I don't remember exactly the term of it. I want to say this is, I want to say it's mono, but I might be wrong. But the idea is, the way that a lot of bands in the 90s, especially grunge bands in the 90s, recorded, is that they did parts on the right hand, parts on the left hand, and therefore, if you don't have good headphones, if you have one side not working, you're not going to hear the whole entire thing. And I noticed that when I was listening to it with my other headphones yesterday, where only one side worked. It's like, why is this not happening? It's like, oh yeah, because some bands do record that way. I haven't listened to it as much recently, but this is a band that definitely does that. So please, if you're going to listen to this with headphones, make sure that both of your headphones work. Anyways, I've rambled on too much. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this. I love talking about this band, and I will definitely be reviewing them at some point in time when I do my discography reviews. I have so much to say on all these CDs. But until then, if you do like this, of course, like this video so that I know that you enjoy what I do. Comment on CDs you would like me to review from 2018 or 2017, or in general, or things I could do better. Share this with your friends so that they also are in the know. Subscribe to my channel so you can see more of my videos. Check out my Are You In playlist if you like what I do. I've done about 20 plus of these so far, and I don't have any intentions on stopping. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. You might even see me from 3 or 4 years ago when I first started doing this. And then finally, just keep on watching what I'm doing. I'll put up a post of this album so that you can listen to it yourself. I'll probably also post I'll probably post the plush cover that I did earlier this week. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. And until then, I will see you later this week for another version of Are You In? Peace.